Ari Lewis Show.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Ari Lewis Show on Israel Sports and News Radio. Thank you for joining us. At any time, you can email the program, arilewishow@hotmail.com, or email the station at Israel Sports and News Radio at gmail.com. This Thursday night, January 7th, will be the second annual Jerusalem Festivus Comedy Festival at the AACI in Jerusalem. On the line right now, the MC and one of the entertainers performing this Thursday night. Back to the program, Jeremy Feldhamer. Jeremy, how you doing out there?
I'm doing great, Ari. Thanks for having me on the program.
Yes, indeed. So this is the second annual Festivus Comedy Festival. Why did Hammer and Nail decide to do this a second year?
Well, it was a success the first year. We raised a lot of money for the charity that we were benefiting at that time, and we decided it was time to do it again. A new charity this time due to the current events, and so far it looks like it's going to be even a bigger success, and we're really excited about it. And also, we want to bring comedy to Jerusalem. There's a really strong comedy presence in Tel Aviv and other parts of Israel. And Jerusalem is lacking. And, we can't have the city of gold only come in bronze when it comes to comedy.
Well said. So do you find that there were a lot of people from Jerusalem contact you saying, I want to go to the show because I'd like to see these comedians, but they're out in Tel Aviv. I don't have the time to go out there. Is that part of the idea behind the show, to bring those Tel Aviv comedians to the Jerusalem audience so they could see them live and in person?
Well, yeah, that is definitely part of the idea. We're also having some Jerusalem comedians as well, and comedians from all over, but it's typically comedians that perform in Tel Aviv. People didn't really contact me. I try not to talk to people. They tend to disappoint me.
At all?
Well, except for you, Ari. But
right, we're talking right now, yeah.
I'm not sure if you qualify as a person. But,
I'm at least 3/4. I'm 5'7". I'm getting,
Are those short jokes? Or?
Yeah, it was one of the short. I made one of them just fun of myself right now. That was cool. So, when your act is mostly the plan Thursday night, a magician type of act? Is that what you're going to plan on doing? I
wouldn't call it a magician or a magic act. I started off doing stand-up comedy. Well, that's not true. I started off being a party clown, when I was in high school for kids' parties. But then after high school, I started doing stand-up comedy at all the clubs in New York City, Comedy Cellar, New York Comedy Club, Stand Up New York, you name it, I was there, and performing all the time, doing straight stand-up. And then, it's a long story short, eventually I started doing comedy hypnosis shows, and then when I moved to Israel and I made Aliyah 6 years ago, I came to find out that Israel is the only country in the world, at least that I know of, I'm pretty sure that's true, it's according to Wikipedia, that hypnosis as a show is illegal. It's the only country in the world where it's illegal. So I couldn't do my hypnosis shows anymore. I started getting back into doing more stand-up comedy.
Wait. Illegal?
Yeah, apparently in this country, it's illegal to talk to someone to make them relax.
Oh, the irony.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to yell at them and push them, that's fine. But if you want to say, relax, calm down, that's a problem.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's illegal here. That could be a whole nother radio discussion. We could talk about that for a long time, the reasons and all that. So I started developing a mentalism act. Mentalism is a act where you pretend to be a psychic, but you don't claim to have any powers, and you don't try to defraud people out of their money by saying you're going to contact Uncle Bob, who's passed on, because that's impossible, right? Well, at least it's impossible for me. But I use all the skills that the psychics use, but I don't claim it, to be, I just do it for entertainment. I don't claim it to be any like occult or supernatural or, I'm just tricking you into thinking I'm a psychic the same way they do.
Wait, you're saying, hold on, Jeremy, you're saying those psychics don't have any actual real powers?
I know, it's hard to believe. So I take my mentalism act and I combine it with comedy, and there you have a comedy mentalist, and that's what I am. I'm a comedy mentalist, and I perform all over the place.
So I imagine that you really hit a home run in your show, that people want to know how you do the acts. Do you ever tell them?
No, I do not, because it ruins it for people. After they know how something is done, the magic is gone. So I do not tell people how I do it. I do tell them, though, that anyone, any 16-year-old can do it with 20 years experience.
Well said. It's interesting. These guys are not mentalists per se, more magicians, but there's Penn and Teller out there, and then back in the day you had Houdini, magician, Jewish guy. Do they affect your act or influence you, even though they're not mentalists and they're magicians?
Well, yeah, 100%. Houdini influenced me a lot, even though he was way before my time. I read a lot about him when I was younger. And Penn and Teller also influenced me tremendously. They did a lot of shows in New York in the 80s when I was growing up, and a lot of TV specials. And the way they influenced me, Houdini, in the second half of his life, he actually went out to debunk psychics. He went out to prove that all psychics were fake. So that really does influence me now in my mentalism act a lot, because I don't want to take credit for any of the things that I do in that type of way. Besides it being dishonest, it's against halacha, really.
Wow.
And Penn and Teller with their comedy, and Penn and Teller never really made it about the trick, right? Penn and Teller always made it about the performance and the story. As a matter of fact, in many of their tricks, they actually redo the trick and show you how it's done. You ever see them do that? Like
sure.
Right? And so it's not really about the trick. At the end, they do put a little twist on it, and you're like, wow, how did they do that part at the end? But it's never really about the trick. It's more about the journey. And I try putting that into my act, too, especially being that it's a comedy act, and there has to be comedy there.
Well, it's interesting you bring up Penn and Teller and Houdini, because they have a similar vein.
Hey, you brought them up.
Well, what I mean is the correlation that they try to debunk things, because Penn and Teller had the show BS for a long time. The whole point was to debunk things they thought were fraudulent. And then Houdini did that, as you mentioned, not with a TV show, but other ways. And then Johnny Carson, who was a magician before The Tonight Show, debunked Israeli magician Uri Geller on a show, surprised him.
Right. Now, Uri Geller is, quote-unquote, a mentalist, right? Like I am. But he, in the beginning, now he, like everybody knows, but in the beginning...
He claimed it was real.
Yeah, he claimed it was real. And Johnny Carson, along with, who was it?
Ed McMahon?
No, well, Ed McMahon is always there next to Johnny Carson.
Oh, this is a different guy you're talking about.
Yeah, I forget his name offhand. Big white beard. Oh, man, I feel so stupid for forgetting his name. But
well, it'll come later. But
it's Randy. That's it. It's James Randy. James Randy helped Carson debunk what's his name, Uri Geller, with his spoon bending act. Which, hey, listen, it's a great act. He had an amazing act, and he fooled a lot of people. But did you have to fool people? You know what I mean? Like, couldn't you just be like, come at it the way I am? Hey, we're here to have fun. Let's have some fun. Not,
right.
Aliens came down and gave me powers.
Was that one of the biggest Chil Hashem's of all time? Like, it was on The Tonight Show, and it was an Israeli guy. Like, that didn't make us look good.
Well, you know what? It's funny, because after The Tonight Show and after the book that James Randy wrote about it, and after all the newspaper articles, a lot of media outlets still carried him as being a real deal. And you know the way it works. If media reports you as being the real thing, everybody believes it. So I don't think it really affected him that much. But it was definitely, the people that realized it, I think it was a Chil Hashem. And also for him, it was an Aveira. You're not allowed to do that. As a matter of fact, I know we're getting into halacha about a comedy topic, but, many people say that if you're going to be doing a magic show, you're supposed to tell people in the show that, hey, this is just tricks. And sometimes they say take it one step further and teach them how a trick is done so they understand that it's just tricks. So what Uri Geller did was definitely wrong.
Yes, and by the way, if there's any doubt, Carson knew that Uri Geller was a fraud. That's why he set him up. It wasn't like Carson thought, maybe this guy's telling the truth. I don't know. Let's find out on the show. I mean, the idea of ambushing him was to prove he was a fraud in front of millions of people on national TV.
Well, I don't know if Carson knew he was a fraud, but I think Carson, because it's hard to say what people know or don't know, but he definitely had a strong belief and opinion that he was a fraud. And what he did was he basically supplied him with ungimmicked props and told him to do the things he normally does with, ungimmicked props that none of his staff had any chance of touching, and no one had any chance of touching. He just sat there and said, oh, I don't feel the power coming to me now. And he wasn't able to do any of the things that he normally did because Carson knew and Randy knew what to give him and what to do. And, yeah, he was debunked, but not really because people still believed him.
Besides, at the end of the day, any appearance on the Johnny Carson show kind of helps a career, kind of no matter what. You can ask Drew Carey, Ellen, Seinfeld, although they did positively on the show. But the powers of Johnny Carson, very interesting fellow nonetheless. We're speaking with a very interesting fellow, Jerry Feldhamer, here on the Ari Lewis Show on Israel Sports and News Radio, talk about the second annual Festivus Comedy Festival. Jerry, part of the idea behind being a mentalist, you mentioned halakha, is that mentalism is a pretty clean act. You're not really doing anything too dirty. You're not really offending people. Is that part of the reason why you like it so much?
Well, first of all, mentalism can be very dirty. There are some very dirty mentalists. You could do anything with any act. You can make it dirty, you can make it clean, you can make it vanilla, you can make it chocolate. You can make it like Liami, who's a Rocky Road. There's a lot of things you could do. I chose to be clean. Listen, when I was younger and I was doing the comedy clubs, I was sometimes dirty. I hate to admit it, but it's true. And one of my mentors, a guy by the name of John DeResta, he said to me that, he said, you're better than that. There's no point for you to be dirty. It's not adding anything to your act, and it's just detracting. And, you don't want to be known as the dirty comic and this and that. And he was right. And it's better, first off, it's better business-wise, because if a company wants to hire you, they don't want to hire the dirty comic to come do their, company barbecue. They want to hire a guy who's clean and corporate. And then as I got older and I realized that, hey, standing on stage and doing dirty things isn't very becoming of me, so that also kind of helped.
Well, by the way, memo to some of the dirtier comedians out there, Lisa Lampanelli, it's true that she's kind of a bit pigeonholed. She does very well, but she can only go so far with that type of material, right?
Well, yeah. Well, listen, Lisa Lampanelli is also a mentor of mine. We hung out a lot. She came to my apartment a couple of times. She's really funny, and but at the same time, yeah, pigeonholed her, but a pigeonholed her into a pigeonhole that she wanted to be in, and she is, the biggest pigeon in that pigeonhole. She's the queen of that. She's the lovable queen of mean. That's her title, and it's for a reason. And she followed in the suit of like Don Rickles and things like that, where she could get pretty dirty, but at the same time, I've seen Lisa do totally clean acts. Insulting, because she's an insult comic, but clean. She knows how to do it clean. So if she's in a comedy club, she's going to be dirty. If she's in a corporate event, she's going to be clean. If she's doing a comedy roast, she's going to be dirty. So she even knows how to tailor it to her audience, and that's I think is the best sign of a good comic, is a comic that's able to tailor their set to an audience. Not necessarily dirty or clean, but whatever the audience needs, they're able to deliver that.
And it's interesting, speaking of Rickles, Rickles was so offensive. He was in the movie Casino, that he apparently really upset Joe Pesci, which is not something you want to do, correct?
Well, I didn't hear this story, but yeah, from what I've heard about Joe Pesci, it's definitely not the guy you want to make fun of.
Yeah.
They did a parody of him on Saturday Night Live in the 90s. Do you remember that? The Joe Pesci show with
Jim Brewer. He talked about that. I know what you were referencing to. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, if anyone upset him on his show, he pulled out a baseball bat and started beating the living hell out of them. So, yeah, and it must be based on some sort of truth. So,
well, people now don't do this now because you're listening to Jeremy and myself. But after this interview, if you YouTube Jim Brewer, Joe Pesci show, and you go to Opie Anthony, he tells the behind-the-scenes stories of when he met Joe Pesci in real life, because Joe Pesci did a cameo on Saturday Night Live, and Jim Brewer was absolutely scared out of his wits, almost wet his pants, almost cried. It's a hilarious story, so check it out.
I don't think he knew that Joe Pesci was coming on the show.
So you think it was a surprise. Well, in any case, so Joe Pesci was not happy about the impression, but then said he was at the end. He was just kidding, kind of like the scene with with Henry Hill and Goodfellas. So it was very interesting how that intertwined. Again, this is the Ari Lewis Show on Israel Sports News Radio. My guest is comedian and mentalist Jeremy Feldhamer. So this Thursday night is the big night. Are there going to be any Festivus activities? Because Festivus, of course, is based on the holiday in the hit show Seinfeld.
Well, there's definitely going to be the airing of grievances. I think that's something that all comedians do. So there's definitely going to be some of that. I don't know. Maybe there'll be some feats of strength. I don't know. Maybe I'll do some push-ups on stage, or maybe I'll challenge someone to an arm wrestle. If any of the audience members want to compete in a feat of strength or an airing of grievance or any of the other Festivus traditions, We'll have a mic pole on stage, so that could kind of count as the Festivus pole. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
People have to come to find out. There we go.
And that's it. Yeah, you have to come and find out, and you have to come and add your own little blend to the show.
Yes, indeed.
Right.
Now, a lot of the comedians that are performing, there's kind of some of the more well-known comedians in Israel. Benji Levitt, Kenny Abelson, Liami Lawrence. He'll be on in the next segment. Talk a bit about those comedians and kind of what they brought to Israel comedy, because Benji and Kenny in particular have been performing in Israel for a pretty long time, number of years now.
Well, I think every comedian is bringing something to comedy. There's a lot of comedians, and they're all bringing something. They're all bringing their own point of view. They're all bringing their own flavor. And it's good. It's great to have that chillin' in comedy and that's one of the reasons, by the way, we're bringing so many comedians this time, because we want to get that chillin' brewing. Last time it was funny. The last show we had people saying, "Oh, this is great. These two guys were great, and that guy I didn't like so much." And then the next person would come and say, "Oh, that guy, he was great. The other two I didn't like so much." And it was like this weird mix, and you couldn't find out like who everybody liked. So that was part of the reason that I decided that let's get a bunch of people so everyone will be happy. Because there's so many different personalities.
Because you're dealing with Jews. Let's be honest.
Right. Well, of course.
All those opinions.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, but what have they brought? Well, listen, Benji really has gotten very active on social media for a long time. And he's let people know that there's a funny side to Israel, and I think that's really cool. Especially English speakers. Let English speakers know there's a funny side to Israel.
Israelis still don't think there's anything funny about Israel. You can see in their face.
Well, that's not true. There's some great Israelis like Shachar Hassan, who's
it's a comedian. Funny. Yeah, definitely. No, but the average Israeli, I'm just making a joke saying the average Israeli seems upset all the time and they don't want to laugh, but that's not true.
They're just upset that they're here. So
right. They tell me that. They'll go, "Why'd you move here?" I don't know. No, I'm kidding. I love it being here. Now, what's interesting about this particular festival, if you will, is that people can purchase a ticket for a victim of terror. Is that correct?
Yeah, we actually had a couple of those purchased already, and I'm really happy to see that. But yeah, people can purchase a ticket for victims of terror. Like, I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but the show is benefiting the One Family Fund, and One Family helps victims of terror. And what we decided to be a cool thing is we're selling a discounted ticket for victims of terror. So when you're buying your ticket, you're going to be asked, "Hey, would you also like to share the gift of laughter?" And you could click on yes, and then you could buy a ticket for a victim of terror. And One Family will give that ticket to one of those victims of terror.
Wow, cool idea. How'd you come up with that? It was pretty good.
It was a way of making more money for the. No, well, listen. Well, obviously that's part of it in some sense, right? Making more money for the program, which helps raise money for the organization. So it's kind of like a win-win. The organization's getting more money, and as well the victims of terror, besides benefiting from the money that the organization gets, they get to benefit from the show too. And and enjoy the laugh, because they really could use it in most situations and cases.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of find with all these things going on that you kind of have to take a break and breathe to kind of get through things, because if you made life too serious in Israel, I think people would break, right?
Oh, 100%. I try to get out and perform a couple times a week myself, at least once a week, a minimum. Just in order to keep myself sane, and it's not just because I'm out there performing. It's that I'm listening to the other comedians and getting a laugh or two, and that really keeps me going. And in the current matzav, the current situation, it's really important to get out and not stay shut in, and to get out and laugh and enjoy life and experience life, and for many reasons, for your own personal mental health. And also just to make sure that we're not letting the bad guys win, because that's kind of what they want to impose on us, is that fear and that terror and being scared and not wanting to leave the home.
Right. They want us to stay in, and that's really how they win if we're afraid. That's really their victory.
Right.
What's also interesting, and I'll bring this up with Liami later on, is the Tel Aviv scene seems to be pretty popping, a lot going on, a lot of different comedy places. Give us your assessment, because you're out on the road doing that, and what do you think is going to happen in the next few years in terms of Israel comedy?
Well, it really all depends on the audience, what's going to happen. I'm not a Navi, even though I play one on stage.
Right.
But, I mean, it really has been growing tremendously over the past couple of years. I mean, there used to be nothing, really, and it was discouraging for me, actually. And then Shachar Hasson started doing his Sunday night show at Jessica Bar, which is filled with some great comedians. It's a little late at night for me, but I try to go there when I can. And then just after that, there's more and more shows started popping up. There's one now, a patio bar and Camel Comedy Club, and Liami Lawrence's show. I love that. I go there almost every week. That's at the Dancing Camel on Wednesdays at 9 o'clock. I think doors open 9 o'clock. Show starts at 9:30, and it's at Dancing Camel, which has great beer. And by the way, Dancing Camel beer is going to be at our show on Thursday, the 7th of January, at discounted prices. So besides coming for great comedy, you come for great beer at a good price.
And the beer makes the comedy better, let's be honest, right?
That's what they say. That's what they say.
Find out for yourself, see?
Yeah, I'm more of a Scotch man myself, but yeah, that's what they say. The beer makes the comedy better.
I'm more of an Iraq guy, but that's more me. But again, this is the Ari Lewis Show on Israel Sports and News Radio, joined by comedian Jeremy Feldhamer. The Festivus Comedy Festival this is January 7th, Thursday. And before we let you go, Jeremy, give a plug. People want to buy a ticket for themselves or a victim of terror, get a VIP ticket, what have you. Where should they go? What should they do?
It's real simple. Just go to hntickets.com, HN like Harry Nancy or Hammer Nail, tickets with an S at the end, .com. And there's a big orange button somewhere on the front page. It says, like, click here for more info and tickets. You click on that, and then you're taken to the event page, and you scroll down to the bottom. Read everything about it. You watch a little video commercial we have there, and you scroll down to the bottom. You tell them how many tickets you want, put in your information, and you buy them safe, secure online. Or, of course, there will be tickets available at the door.
All right, good stuff. Great cause. Again, the Festivus Comedy Festival, January 7th, Thursday, the AACI. We'll take a break. On the other side will be Liami Lawrence. Jeremy, thanks for your time. Good luck on the show on Thursday. Break a leg, as they say.
Thank you so much, and don't forget to send me a check for doing this.
Yes, the check will be $0.00.
Oh, perfect. I'm used to those.
Excellent. All right, be well. Speak to you soon.
You too. Bye-bye.
Welcome to the Ari Lewis Show.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Ari Lewis Show here on Israel Sports and News Radio. Thank you for joining us. At any time, you can email the program arilewishow@hotmail.com, or you can email the station Israel Sports and News Radio at gmail.com. This Thursday, January 7th, at the AACI will be the second annual Festivus Comedy Festival, which will feature many comedians of Anglo persuasion. On the line right now, one of those comedians, kind of the jack of all trades, was a radio talk show host in California and has worked on a group to help Olim stay in Israel. Also does comedy. We'll talk about that. On the line right now, Liami Lawrence. Liami, welcome back to the program.
Shalom, shalom. How are you?
Doing great. It's great to have you on. So, I've asked other comedians this that have done comedy in Israel. When you got to Israel, you've been to Israel many times, and this is another time you've been in Israel, but did you think that you'd be performing comedy in English here in the Holy Land?
Never. Never, 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 never. I had a radio talk show in the States, and I was funny. It was like a la Howard Stern. But I never thought that I'd be doing comedy here. And in January, after I had surgery, I said to myself, what do I really want to do with my life? And then I said to become a comedian. And then in February, I started to do a show. I did my first show, and all the comics came up to me, and they're like, Achi, you never did comedy before? And I'm like, no. And they're like, come do my show. Come do my show. So I started to do shows, and that's the end of it. And now here we are.
So you notice, like you said, you had some comedic talent as shown on the radio, but stand-up is a totally different ballgame. I've told other people that it's probably the hardest thing to do in all of entertainment because it's just you and a microphone, and you got to make the crowd happy. What do you think of that assessment? Do you think it's the toughest thing to do in entertainment?
Doing comedy is standing naked in front of the audience. If you're an actor in a play and you're doing a play, you have lines, okay? When you're singing in front of an audience, you sing. When you do comedy, you're talking, but if there's no laughing, you're naked. So that's the hardest thing, because there's an immediate audience reaction. And if the audience ain't reacting, you be naked. You feel naked because they're not laughing at you. So it's an immediate reaction, and that is why it's the hardest form of entertainment, I believe. Maybe a singer will tell me otherwise, but I think comedy is the hardest thing, because if you don't get laughs and there's silence, you're naked.
Well said. I agree with that. So how do you go about getting your material? What particular things do you focus on? Do you do everyday life, your personal life, politics? What generates your material on stage?
I think I always had material. I think you just look at your life living in Israel, you have a lot of material. I mean, it just comes to you. And seeing how it's life of the bizarro here. I mean, it's a very bizarre life. It's not a normal country. And you just look at the news, or you look in your everyday life, or your dealings at the shuk, or your dealings at the supermarket, or the taxi cab driver, and there you have comedy right there.
True, indeed. Again, this is the Ari Lewis Show on Israel Sports and News Radio. We're speaking with comedian Liami Lawrence, who will be performing this Thursday night at the AACI in Jerusalem, second annual Festivus Comedy Festival. So, Liami, you've had pretty good success in Israel. Like you mentioned, last February is really when you started stand-up comedy. So tell us about some of the reactions. Ever been heckled? Ever been booed? Ever been cheered really loud? Tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly.
So, for weeks I prepared to do comedy, and I studied YouTube, and I was like, the biggest regret, I studied comedy in Los Angeles with some of the top comedians. I just didn't have the guts to go up there and do it. So it's not like I never was trained to do it. I was trained to do it. Didn't have the guts to do it. I was always afraid of hecklers and people not laughing. The only heckler that I ever had is the one who owns the bar and brewery where I do a weekly comedy show every week. And so I turned my heckler into my biggest fan. And that's the only heckler I ever had, and he wasn't heckling me. He was just drunk that night. And he was reacting, talking. Sometimes you had people talk back to the comics. So he was talking back, and so I brought him on stage with me. We sang a song, and he became my number one fan.
Pretty cool story. In general, do you try to incorporate the audience in your act?
I do talk to the audience. I think, there should, what's the word I'm looking for? You have to be at one with the audience, okay? It's not you and the audience. You have to be one. If you are one, then they're going to laugh at you. And you're going to get more into it by reacting off the audience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. A comedian told me one time every time he goes on stage, he actually says a blessing in his mind to the audience. He looks at it not as a competition with them, but like he wants to do good things for them. Do you try to view that in the same way?
We're there for the audience, okay? And I learned doing this for 9 months now, and I've had my own show for the last 4.5 months, a weekly show every Wednesday night at the Dancing Camel in Tel Aviv. You're there for the audience. You have to do the same show. If there's 3 people, or there's 100 people, or 200 people, or 1,000 people, it's the same show. They took their time out of their lives to come see you perform. So you need to perform, and you can't cop an attitude, oh, it's a small crowd tonight, so no. And some of the comics taught me that in the beginning. When I started, I went to I did a sets on different people's shows, and some of them had very small turnouts. And then I'm like, oh, I don't feel like going on. And they showed me that that's the wrong attitude to take, and that is when you grow so much as a comic. If there's 3 people there, you give them a private show for 3 people, and you make them laugh. And as a comic, it builds you. It makes you grow. You grow so much by doing a show for 3 people and making 3 people laugh, even more so than making 1,000 people laugh.
Do you find in particular that the smaller shows can be more intimate, because like you said, a private show, you maybe, I don't want to say test out material, but you can try things a little differently with a smaller crowd, or do you not go in that direction at all?
With a smaller crowd, I improvise a lot because, you're ignoring the elephant in the room if you just go on with your show and like as if 3 people aren't there. No, so it's about a lot of improv and a lot of rapport with the audience because there's 3 people there and you don't want to lose 3 people. You know what I'm saying? So you involve them and you change. A comic needs to think with his feet and act accordingly and make jokes accordingly. Not every show goes off as planned. Some of the best lines as a comic are those that are improvised based on the audience, based on the feedback.
Right. And it's one of those things, if you only have 3 people, like you said, if you lose 1, that's a third of the audience. So you got to have everybody involved. Liami, this Thursday night, we're going to have Benji Love, Kenny Abelson, some of the comedians featured. I want to know any particular comedians in Israel that have helped you a bit. You were talking about they've given you advice. Anyone kind of stand out? Yeah, tell me about it.
Sure. There are 2 of them that have really, really helped me, and that is Shachar Hassan, one of the top comics in Israel, if not the top comic, the next or second or third top comic in Israel. Shachar, he's helped me amazingly, and my brother Yochai Sponder, who's a top Israeli comic as well. And, he saw me perform like the second time, and he's like, no, we need to come work. So he spent the day with me where I rewrote all my material and took his advice, and that's it, It's really wonderful how people help each other. And in the comedy world in Israel, because it's such a small community, I think everybody helps each other.
Yeah, something definitely nice to see about that. Again, this is the Ari Lewis Show.
All these comics that are performing Thursday, we're all friends. It's such a nice family of comedy. We all see each other 2 or 3 times a week. We perform at different shows of each other, and it's really nice that we're doing this in Jerusalem for such a good cause.
Yeah, dude, it benefits the One Family Fund, and a lot of people in Jerusalem don't have a chance to go out to Tel Aviv to see some of the comedians featured in Thursday night's show. That's certainly a nice treat. Again, this is the Ari Lewis Show here on Israel Sports News Radio, joined by comedian Liami Lawrence. Liami, do you have any particular goals in the next year? Something you'd like to accomplish, something you'd like to get done in the world of comedy?
We're going to film a pilot in a few weeks for TV, and we'll see how that goes. And, I will probably take my act on the road a lot more now that it's down packed. Basically, I've had a lot of health problems in Israel the last 6-7 months, so it's kept me from doing shows out of Tel Aviv. And now that I'm better, I intend to do shows all over the country.
All right, good to hear. Full shlema to you on all that. So you want to go more on the road and film a pilot. What do you think about the future of comedy in Israel in general? It seems the last few years it's gotten a bit bigger. A lot of shows you mentioned in Tel Aviv, all over the place. What do you think will happen a few years down the road in Israel in terms of the world of comedy here?
Well, I'm just speaking for a lot of the Israeli comedians, the Hebrew-speaking comics. They want to go abroad. And Shachar, for instance, just came back from the States. He did a month tour in the States. And that's the thing. Comedy transcends all boundaries. And when you do a comedy show in Hebrew, it's a very limited audience. Doing it in English, a lot of the people that come to the shows are Israeli, believe it or not. Not just Americans or English or British or Australians, but Israeli. And that's the best thing. Yeah, comedy transcends all boundaries, just like music does. And so people could, like I stand out. I'm an American comic here. I'll do riffs on Hebrew and stuff like that, and Israelis find that funny. It's naturally funny. I don't have to do anything. I just speak in Hebrew, and everybody laughs.
So a last question I have for you before we let you go. You have this great project about keeping Olim here in Israel. Any chance you try to help keep English coming to Israel or the Israeli comedians in Israel? You mentioned they want to go abroad. Something that could keep the comedians here, because a lot of comedians, as you mentioned, have to travel abroad to really make a good living. Any ideas about that?
Repeat the question, please.
Sure. Basically, you have that program about keeping Olim here in Israel. I want to know if you would venture into keeping Israeli comics in Israel. You mentioned how they want to go abroad. Is there anything you could do in that regard to try to help them?
Well, when I'm saying to go abroad, it's to travel and to do shows abroad. They're not leaving Israel, so it's two separate things. When people who are artists want to go abroad, Israel's a small country, so they like to take their material abroad and widen their audience. But that doesn't mean they want to live abroad. They want to live here, And the same thing with what my group is trying to do. It's trying to keep people in Israel. We don't want them to leave. So that's what the whole group's about. It's called Keep Olim in Israel. And we are now a nonprofit. And we're doing programs for post-Aliyah to keep Olim that are here in Israel.
Well said and well done. Again, this is the Ari Lewis Show on Israel Sports and News Radio. My guest has been Liami Lawrence. He'll be performing this Thursday night at the AACI in Jerusalem to benefit the One Family Fund. The comedic show is the second annual Jerusalem Festivus Comedy Festival. Liami, thanks so much for your time this evening. Looking forward to seeing you on Thursday.
Likewise, I look forward to seeing you, and we hope that everyone comes out. Everybody in Jerusalem needs a laugh. Coming out, come on, support a good cause, have a good night, get in a good mood, and come on down. And we look forward to seeing all of you there this Thursday. Ciao.
Sounds good. Ciao, man. Be well. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.